While the current legislation runs into next year, Nebraska Extension Policy Specialist Brad Lubben says conversations on what would be the 2018 Farm Bill have already begun. The Farm Bill contains several programs, including crop insurance, conservation, and commodities. The biggest chunk, about 80% of projected spending, goes to nutrition. We talked with Brad Tuesday and discussed the potential futures for each of those programs.
Well, this Farm Bill process is underway. We know the Senate Agriculture Committee held a field hearing back in February. That was sort of the initial kickoff. But the House Agriculture Committee and all of its subcommittees have followed with a series of hearings as well. And we've sort of heard from every major interest on this Farm Bill process already. Lots of issues on the table, but obviously lots of work yet to do.
Let's talk about a few issues here. Let's start with crop insurance. Is it any safer this time around?
One would look at crop insurance and know that last time in the 2014 Farm Bill we actually added to it, so we strengthened it. We did put some additional demands on it, particularly in terms of conservation compliance. But it is still the major item in the farm income safety net. And as one of the four big ticket items, one of the four big bank accounts in the Farm Bill, it's always a target. And that'll be work that the ag community really has to push forward here in the next couple of years to see this through to the end.
What changes with the commodity programs?
On the commodity programs, you have, remember, the crop programs as well as particularly the dairy program. And almost in all cases, there's general satisfaction with the direction of programs, but there are all kinds of requests for changes. Reform the way the ARC program works, the Agricultural Risk Coverage Program, that is the moving average revenue safety net. We know there are discrepancies in payments across counties. That's really by design. That's how the program's supposed to work. We know that there are some issues with data, yield data, that affect some of those payments and discrepancies that may be addressed, but definitely there's a tweak here, a tweak there that producers seem to be looking for. Even on dairy, we shifted fundamentally from a price safety net to a margin safety net in the 14 Farm Bill. While that concept is still attractive, dairy producers are arguing that the current equation and calculation isn't sufficient. And so everybody's asking for some improvement in how it works.
Senator John Thune this week from South Dakota suggested that perhaps they could scale up the CRP enrollment.
Right.
Is that realistic?
Well, that's yet another one of those asks. Here's the conservation title, another one of those four big bank accounts. And the CRP program has shrunk in the last two Farm Bills, largely following the market. The market encouraged more land into production out of the CRP, so we shrink the CRP cap to save money. Now we're in a market climate where we'd like to put a little more land into the CRP, but the cap has to be raised. Just like asking for changes in commodity programs or elsewhere, raising the cap has a budget cost to it, and a fairly substantial one. So that's one of the major asks as well.
Do you think that's a stretch? Do you think it's realistic that the CRP enrollment, the target, would go higher?
Clearly there are lots of interests and lots of motivation to push the target higher. You have support in the environmental and conservation as well as wildlife communities, and you have support on the agricultural community or the agricultural groups that see the potential supply and demand effect.
I think the discussions about splitting the nutrition program away from the agricultural program, it's quieter now than it was. Maybe you disagree, but is that something that some senators or congressmen are still looking at?
There is certainly pressure to look at splitting them again. The same interests that pushed a split back in 2013 when it actually was split in the House, but then it was passed and separately and pushed back together. The same interests are there to split from both the far left and the far right, and there may be even more impetus this time around to try and find a way to rein in the budget, and that involves a strategy of divide and conquer. But for every agricultural group, and for most of the farm or of the food and nutrition groups as well, the coalition, they've learned how valuable that coalition is, and most of the sort of advice around the table thus far has been the necessity, the importance of keeping them together. We know the nutrition title is the biggest title, even for as strong as that coalition is. We also know that the ag groups can't expect to find money there to fund something else. That's a sibling relationship that nutrition needs its component as well.